Alrighty, everybody, we can get started. I want to thank you guys for joining us for Literation Lounge. Can everybody hear me okay? Hoping so. Thumbs up. Alrighty. My name is Monica Groves. I'm Senior Associate for the Adult Literacy X Prize, and we're very excited today to have Michael Korn with us. Amazing guy doing really great things. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Literation Lounge. Literation Lounge is a virtual speaker series that we started that is supported by the Barbara Bush Foundation Adult Literacy X Prize. And the Literation Lounge features entrepreneurs and movers and shakers in ed tech, adult literacy, adult education, just really making way and breaking ground on serving or solving the world's literacy problem. Today's presentation will be about 35 minutes. And today for our installment, we have Michael Korn, Chief Strategy Officer of the Entangled Group. And this presentation will discuss what motivates people to consume more education, the common ways we categorize people and products, and things that actually doom most new offerings to fail because we fail to understand what's really the underlying cause and motivation for people and why they consume and the circumstances under which they do consume. With this, it'll help us understand what experiences we need to provide to help people make progress. And this is pretty much the underpinning of Job to be Done, a theory pioneered by the Clayton Christensen Institute. Michael will share research from his upcoming book around what are the jobs to be done and that adults have that cause them to pursue more education, and what are the implications for how you design and market educational offerings that help them make progress on their own terms. So, Michael, did I get everything good?
I think you. I think you could give the presentation.
Okay. Well, you can take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome.
With you certainly, and with several of the folks here. I suspect I got to talk to some of you all in DC a couple years back. So, and I know I talked about this idea of jobs to be done at the time, and excited to share a little bit more research that we've done since, and hopefully it spurs your own thinking. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this will work. As I get the spinning wheel of color right now. Hold on one moment. There we go. Okay, share screen. And hopefully you see my PowerPoint there. Great. Okay, so basically, as Monica said, and I'll click forward here. The question that we've been thinking a lot about from an innovation perspective over many years is how do we design our services to delight users and motivate them to actually consume them and use them in the ways that they were intended to be used. We see tons of products with great social meaning over the years where people ought to do it. It would be good for them if they did it, and yet people just don't seem to use those different services. And so how do we understand why that is? And our senses come from this theory known as jobs to be done. And so I thought I would just give a high-level overview of the theory here in a pretty brief fashion, and then talk about the specific research we did and 5 jobs that we uncovered for which people hire college and post-secondary education more generally, and as hopefully a window to why adults are hiring more education. So the basic idea, as Theodore Levitt said many years ago, is that people don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill. They really want the 1/4-inch hole. They want the outcome. They don't care about the product that you're selling. They're looking for an outcome itself. And what I like to say is that actually Theodore Levitt, he's a famous marketing professor at Harvard many decades ago, is actually this is incomplete itself. Because why do they want the hole? Do they want to hang a picture? Are they looking to drill so that they can put in a door frame? What are they actually doing that for? So you have to keep asking why. And it goes to this question that I like to say is, which one is better at the end of the day? Steak or pizza? And the answer is it depends. It depends upon the circumstance you're in. So circumstance really helps you to understand what quality is and what is the outcome that matters. And the way to think about this is you might say taking a client you're trying to impress for raising money perhaps to a high-end steakhouse, great idea. Taking them to a pizza shack, maybe less so. It's not going to impress them in the same way. By the same token, if you took a 2nd grade soccer team to a steakhouse, probably a really bad idea, but a pizza joint would be perfect for their 2nd grade soccer party. So context really matters. And so it's not that steak restaurants or pizza restaurants are better than the other, but that they're different and that in different circumstances, different ones are the outcome that you desire. Similarly, product categories and demographics tend to mislead us. So years ago, M&M Mars wondered, are Milky Way and Snickers, which are two of their candy bars, are they actually stealing market share from each other? And they did this enormous amount of research where they dug into the question, and they called up one of our colleagues. And what they ended up learning was actually Snickers and Milky Way are hired for two totally different things. And even though they had framed them as chocolate bars, they were hired for two very different jobs. Snickers bars tended to be hired by people who were looking for a meal replacement. So they had skipped a meal in the middle of the day. They were starving. They couldn't, there was no Cliff Bar or Power Bar or whatever nearby. And so they grabbed a Snickers and they would eat it on the run and fill their meal that way. Milky Ways were hired for something totally different, which is that Milky Ways were hired in essence as a consolation candy. So you'd had a rough day and you came home at the end and you just wanted to sort of be by yourself and wallow in your misery. And Milky Way was essentially competing with ice cream for that consolation at the end of the day. And so framing the world by chocolate candy bars totally misleads you into thinking like, oh, Snickers has nougat inside that's really thick. Maybe Milky Way needs to have that too. Or vice versa. Milky Way is nice and creamy and soft, therefore Snickers should be softer too. But once you understand that they're actually hired for two very different jobs, you can frame what is improvement and how do you make improvement very differently. And you realize they don't compete against each other at all. The same thing is true of demographics, saying white males aged 35 to 49, in my case with kids, on average are most likely to buy a minivan. In my case, that happens to be true, but in many cases, you don't conform to your average demographic. Instead, you have a problem arise in your life or a job you have to do, progress you're seeking to make, and you hire different products or services to help you make that progress. In other words, the demographic you're in isn't the causal mechanism generally that causes you to do something. It's much more, offers some context around that, but understanding the causal mechanism is really what the job to be done is after. And once you understand that job to be done, you can explore its functional, emotional, and social dimensions. And then you can ask yourself, okay, what are the experiences we need to provide to really nail that job? In the case of a Snickers bar, understanding that it's a meal replacement, you realize it has to be thicker, it has to be more filling, things like that. And then you ask yourself, okay, what do we need to do together and how do we have to integrate? So you make the nougat feeling even thicker, which is true. Once Snickers did this research, they made it even more filling, thicker, crunchier, and so forth. They changed their advertising campaigns. So now you say, you're not you when you're hungry, eat a Snickers. Snickers really satisfies. All of those campaigns came out of them realizing that we are hired as a meal replacement. We're not competing with Milky Way. And so once you understand that, you can start to say, oh, well, the traditional way of framing the world by product category means you get misaligned feature creep, because Snickers bar would say anytime Milky Way makes a change, we have to do the same thing to keep up. Or if you frame the world by demographic, you get sort of one size fits none products where every white male with kids, you basically just try to throw in whatever that person might want, and you're just going to get this huge cross section of jobs. And so you end up becoming a one size fits none product. But when you really understand the job to be done, you can integrate around it and just nail those critical experiences. And so organizations that segment the markets by job, they tend to find that the market's larger, their share is smaller than they thought. Their real competitors aren't even in their category. They're things like Cliff Bars or things that you would grab and go on the run that you would eat for a meal replacement. Your growth potential is actually much greater. They can integrate properly, and actually how you brand and talk about what you're doing is much more straightforward. So we did a massive amount of research discovering what is the job to be done for which people hire post-secondary education. And I'll spare you the details, but in essence, the high level is we did a couple hundred deep interviews with students, basically recreating mini documentaries of how they made the college decision or the post-secondary decision or the boot camp decision or whatever it was that they were deciding to do. And we identified the forces that were pushing and pulling them toward that education, and what were the anxieties and habits that were holding them back, that were preventing them from making that progress, that leap forward into more education to help them consume education. And through those process of mini documentaries and categorizing these forces that were acting on them, we then did a cluster analysis and came up with 5 different jobs to be done that we uncovered. So I'll walk through them here. 4 of them I think are relevant for the adult education space in particular. I'll tell you the 5th just because it's interesting. And then I'll tell you a few other things that we've done with this research, and then hopefully we can have a brief conversation at the end of it. So the first one we're calling Help Me Get Away. So it's when people need to get out of a job role or habit, when they need to get away from a home or town or family or relationship. They need a break from the daily grind. So there's a lot pushing them out of their current circumstances. And there's very little pulling them into that experience. They want some support. They want to check a box because society will look highly upon them for getting more education, but they're not really sure why they're getting that education, except that they want to escape their current reality. And as a result, as you might imagine, 58% of the people who go into education with this mindset tend to be dissatisfied with the choice. They're not super understanding that they just don't see why it applied to them and so forth, and they tend to conclude that it was a waste of time, money, and effort. I'll give you an example of the student Naomi. She was looking to leave home. She had a bad relationship with her stepdad. Relationship with her mom had soured. She was being asked to care for her step siblings who were 13 and 14 years younger than them. And she knew a coworker from Taco Bell at a small liberal arts college a few hours away. And so she just applied there on a whim, got in and basically went there, and then within a year dropped out because she wasn't prepared academically, was racking up a ton of debt. She changed majors 3 times, totally lost confidence in herself, and came back home afterwards, $40,000 in debt. And I think the big takeaway out of this is that there's a lot of people who are looking to help them get away, but they ought to be consuming education in small chunks, not big bites, because they shouldn't be incurring huge debt when they really don't know what their passion is. And so you can imagine someone in the context of literacy or something like that, they want that new job and they just jump into, for example, a literacy app, but without that real intrinsic motivation or sense of why. And if you can build that sense of why in them and move them to the next job, I think it's a much more productive place for them to consume that learning. So the second one we found is, I think, one that I suspect you'll find is deeply motivating for why people will consume literacy learning, which is Help Me Step It Up. So students who had this job, they said, when this isn't me, I need to step it up. I know I can do better. When I need to get out of this job or role or habit, they were often sort of in a minimum wage job. They liked a lot of things about their life, but they knew it wasn't tenable going forward. And they were saying, time is running out. It's now or never. I've got to step it up because of a living paycheck to paycheck, a looming milestone. I'm expecting a child, whatever it might be. And I'm afraid of where things are headed. If I continue down this road, this isn't me and it's going nowhere fast. And so I need specific practical skills, knowledge, certifications that are, excuse me for that loud noise outside, are going to allow me to step it up and really step to the next level in my life. And so they were very clear typically about what they were driving toward, what that future was, and why they were doing it. And unsurprisingly, I would say 79% were satisfied with their choice. This was the classic adult learner. 92% of these people had work experience. A lot of them had some college, no degree. And they were ready to step it up into that next level. I suspect a lot of people who will come to your apps will be in this sort of a window where they're saying, I've hit some sort of barrier in my career, something's not right, but I like a lot of my life and I'm ready to take the next step. I don't care about the degree. I want the skills and certifications and the doors that it will open. And what I will tell you, I'll tell you a depressing story of how this played out. Was Mindy, who left a stable job to care for her ailing mom with cancer. And when her mom recovered, she decided it was time to try college for the 3rd time. And she attended an online for-profit to study, to become a midwife, and basically regain her confidence. And once she was there, she realized the school literally did not have a program that would allow her to become a midwife. And so she'd enrolled in a place that did not have a match for what she wanted to become. And this sort of illustrates that there was 21% of these stories that kind of ended in failure. And almost always it was because they hadn't really defined that future clearly enough. They had sold themselves a dream of course I can master that knowledge, or of course I will like this career, or they hadn't done their research about the program or whatever it is. And so my basic advice here would be, make sure these students really have a clear picture of why they're coming to your app and what they're hoping to get out of it, and that they've crystallized it. They have a clear sense of their strengths, their desires, what they need to do to take that next step, and so forth. Ken, it worked much better for. He quit his job at a tech company after he saw his career prospects there decline after a project. He'd been shuttled into a unit where there was basically a dead end. He enrolled in a part-time boot camp course with a boot camp that actually was not his first choice, but it was convenient. It would start immediately, and so he didn't have to wait. And so this illustrates another thing, which is prestige and brand and things like that are not important in this particular job. What's important is the convenience, and it will get me from point A to point B. And if you can show that and make sure that point B is really clear, then people will run to this. And so that's what happened here. He built up a portfolio of work and started to apply for jobs full time. The third job we saw was one I suspect you'll see as well, which is we're calling Help Me Extend Myself. So these were people there was a lot of pull for the experience. They wanted to learn more about themselves, challenge themselves. They wanted to pursue a clear, concrete vision. They wanted specific practical skills and certifications similar to the last job. But as opposed to the time running out and sort of compressing upon them, it was when I'm now ready. At last, I now have the time in my life. I can make it a priority. I now have the time and I can fit it into my life and budget. And I'm ready to tackle something I've always wanted to do, or I can see why it's really relevant to me. And so these were people that were often doing this in a low-risk situation, and they were able to go, be something or do something bigger than themselves. And so it might be an older student, you can imagine, who's always wanted to learn those English literacy skills to get ahead and said, I don't need it, but I can see how it'd be super useful for my current reality, and I really want to go get it. Or I want to be a role model for my kids to show them that it's possible at my age. There's a variety of manifestations of this, but it was very pull heavy, and there was very little push in it. It was very aspirational, so I can do this, that I've always wanted to do in some sense. 88% were satisfied with their choice. Maybe no surprise there, but people were excited about this. Even if they didn't complete, they were excited because they tended to be low risk. They could always go back to what they were doing before. And they were super excited by what they had learned in the experience. They didn't care about the grades per se. Classic example was Navina. She was succeeding in her job but growing bored doing marketing communications for a firm, realized she wanted to do something more data related. She got an outside job offer and she brought it to her current employer. The outside job offer basically said, we'll train you to become a data analyst and work in our firm. And the current employer basically said, well, we don't have a data analyst position. We don't even have a department around data analytics, but we'll pay for you to go to a boot camp and start a data science initiative at our company. And if it doesn't work, yeah, it's fine. You just go back and you can go back to marketing communications. So she chose the most convenient boot camp that would allow her that optionality. The fourth job, as I said, I'll skip by this quick because I don't think it's relevant, but these were people who wanted to get into the best college experience for them. And it was really so that they could have that classic college experience and tended to be a more traditional demographic student. I'll push through that. The last one I think is important too. It was to help me do what's expected of me. A lot of these people were saying it was when they needed to satisfy or obey someone in their life or a school or something like that. So they could check a box when they didn't see other options, when they need to take the next logical step. And so they have a safety net or something to fall back on. These students, they were not extrinsically motivated. They were, intrinsically motivated. They were being pushed into this by someone else. And most of them were traditional college-age students, but some of them were actually, there was a significant chunk that were in that adult learner that their employer was saying, go get this further education. You should go do this. It would be good for you, something like that. And if it wasn't intrinsically motivated, they really weren't excited. And you can see high dissatisfaction with this choice as well. And my advice, if you're serving someone in this sort of a job, is try to move them into job 2 or job 3, into the help me step it up or help me extend myself. Try to create a short time frame of some sort that really makes them reassess what they're doing and make it about them, instill the passion and purpose in them so that they get excited about it and see why it's important for them, not because someone's pushing them here. I'll skip the story for the moment, but that gives you a sense of this, of the 5 jobs that we found. I'll tell you just one other thing, which is we also did this with the tutoring company. And we found that, and I think it's relevant, obviously, because many of you will be hired in sort of tutor-like applications. And this was an online tutoring company. And they found sort of 4 jobs, if you will. And I'll just quickly tell them. The first one was help me recover. I've had a failure in my life, and I need tutoring to help me get back on track. The second one was ensure my success. So I'm studying in advance of the quiz or assessment or whatever it might be that's coming. Then there was, for job 3, there were sort of 2 flavors of it. One was, I need skills now to do my job so that I can succeed. So I got the job, and holy cow, I sort of lied to them that I know how to do this, and I need the skills to be able to step it up and do it. The other one was, I need new skills in the future so that I can look good socially and for future work. And so sort of preparing for it. And then the last one was sort of help me advance in my hobby. So I'm doing this just as like I want to learn how to play guitar as sort of an example. Can a tutor help me do that? Not because it really matters to me, but because I think it would be fun to do. So I'll stop there, but hopefully that's interesting and useful to you all as framing this. And I guess what I would say is these jobs themselves, I think, are probably directly relevant in some cases to what you're doing. But I actually think thinking even a level deeper about what these jobs might look like in your specific context with a specific app that you've built and specific students you're going to be serving, and really diving deep to get to the why and the circumstance about why students have come to you is absolutely critical to being successful with what you all have built and designed to help people learn. And what I just hope is that the Jobs to be Done thinking is useful, because you can build the best app in the world, but if no one picks it up and actually uses it and engages with it and is motivated to get through it, it's not going to have the impact that we want. And this is a way, I think, to think through that motivation. So appreciate the time, and I think we have 5-7 minutes, hopefully, for some questions.
Yep, we have about 4 minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put that in the Q&A or the chat window, and we'll be able to answer that for you. I know, Michael, I'll have a statement. We used to talk about the jobs that need to be done. Is going above and beyond just the most obvious deliverable, which is, you know, a GED or some kind of skill training, and figuring out what is the most motivation behind that. You know, there's a reason why someone wants a GED: to get a better job, to provide for their children, to be able to do some applied, learning in the workplace. So I see how it's really going away from what is the tangible, what is the obvious, I am going to achieve this certificate, to what is the motivation behind wanting to get this certificate.
It's exactly right. And those, the functional dimensions are sometimes the most obvious element of a job to be done, but the social and emotional are actually, I would argue, almost always the most important. How does it make me personally feel emotionally, and how does it make me feel in relation to others socially? Are incredibly important. And if you can drill down into that context and see these patterns, I think the richness of what you can create is significantly more. Looks like
we do have one question, and I'll read that and give it to you. Is how do you motivate people to change from one type of job or motivation factor to another?
Great question. Something we're thinking a lot about, because that's actually the key. Is when someone's in what I would say a not productive job to be done, moving them to another one is the key thing. There's a couple ways you can do it. One, you can change the circumstances that they're in. So I'm in the help me do what's expected of me job. I show up at college, and you might lower the expectations. You're here because you're going to transfer within 6 months, right? And all of a sudden I've reframed it so that now I might actually really love it, or I might really focus on that transfer point, or I might go get a job And it all of a sudden moves me into the help me step it up because the job builds passion in me. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, now I see why the degree is valuable. It's so I can do X, right? And so it might change you. And so I don't want to overgeneralize, but if you can change circumstances someone's in, or if you can say, hey, they're in the job that they're in, like the help me get away job, for example, that someone in that job, they just got to get away. They have to act on it. But the moment they do so, now their circumstances have changed again. And can you reframe it to put a more productive job around them, basically? So in some cases, like they actually have to take that step, but make it as short as possible, as compressed as possible. Don't spend a lot of resources on it so that they immediately enter a new circumstance or phase of life with new progress that they can make. And I'm happy to send you the PowerPoint so you can share.
And also this webinar will be recorded, and we can always put it on our Adult Literacy X Prize YouTube channel. So something you can refer to and share out with your colleagues or those in your network who are looking to be more effective in how they're serving their learners. And Michael, how would you want to distribute that PowerPoint?
Why don't I send it to you and then you can just share it with folks.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll receive it, and if you send it to me today, I'll make sure that I share it out to those who registered.
Cool. Yeah, I always say open source is good, and it helps all of us. So yeah.
Got it. Any other questions? Inquiring minds want to know. Anne says thank you. Let's go to a couple more minutes. Brian, the presentation will be emailed to those who registered for the Literation Lounge, as well as this recorded webinar will be on the Adult Literacy X Prize YouTube channel. You're welcome, Ryan.
I just sent it to you, so.
All righty. Do we have any more questions? Last call. Lots of thanks and gratitude in the chat window, I see.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for what you're all doing and building, and hope it continues to go well and change the world. So.
Definitely. Well, as we wrap this up, I want to thank you guys for joining us for this Literation Lounge. We're always wanting to bring something of value and something that will really help you guys as you do the work that needs to be done in the adult education, adult literacy sphere. So thank you very, very much. And as you know, the Adult Literacy X Prize, we're always moving forward and trying to be as innovative as possible in how we deliver to the adult learners that we're servicing. So we do have the communities competition that's currently in the registration phase. So if you want more information about the cool things that we're doing now, please do visit communities.xprize.org. You'll learn more about that. And Michael, is there any specific website or place you can go to learn more about you?
Yeah, michaelbhorn.com is probably the easiest. And I'm on Twitter at michaelbhorn. And you can always go to entangled.solutions as well.
Alrighty, thank you so much for your time, Michael. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. And once again, we'll have this video up on the Adult Literacy X Prize YouTube channel by the end of the day. I'll be sure to also include in that email of the PowerPoint a link to the video as well. Alrighty, so everybody have a great afternoon or evening where you are. Be safe. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you.